There's a specific moment when you walk into your bank and the teller stops calling you sir out of policy and starts calling you by your name out of interest. Same you. Same haircut, same wrinkled shirt, same terrible parallel parking job out front. The only thing that changed is a number on a screen they can see and you can feel. Here's the thing nobody tells you about building wealth. The money itself is almost boring. What's wild is watching the world rearrange itself around you as you cross certain invisible lines. Family you haven't heard from in years, banks that wouldn't return your call now assigning you a personal human being. Strangers deciding you must be smart just because you look like you have money. This isn't a video about getting rich. It's about the 3 net worth levels where people, institutions, and even your family start treating you like a completely different person. And a 4th thing nobody warns you about. The reason none of them ever feels like enough. My name is Sam and I spend a genuinely unreasonable amount of time thinking about money and why people behave the way they do around it. If you've ever felt like the world runs on a set of rules nobody handed you, subscribe and hit that like button because today we're mapping out exactly where those rules change and which level is secretly a trap. Quick thing first. I'm not a financial advisor and this isn't financial advice. These are just patterns I've watched play out over and over. So let me show you where you actually stand right now because I promise it's not where you think. The median net worth of an American household is about $192,900. That's the middle. But the average is roughly $1,063,700. The average is more than 5 times the median. How? Because a tiny group at the top is so absurdly wealthy they yank the average upward. Most people are nowhere near $1 million. Most people are 1 transmission failure away from a very bad month. That's the map. Now let's climb it. The first line you cross happens at a number that sounds almost insultingly small once you see what it does. $100,000. I know $100,000 isn't a yacht. But there's a reason Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, said this. The first $100,000 is a B, but you got to do it. I don't care what you have to do. Find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit. Why would a billionaire obsess over a number that was a rounding error to him? Because of what happens after you hit it. Money doubles on a schedule, and that schedule depends only on your rate of return, not on how much you have. The rule of 72 divide 72 by your annual return, and that's roughly how many years your money takes to double. At a 7% return, money doubles about every 10 years. That 10-year doubling time is identical whether you've got $100 or $100 million, but the dollars it spits out are not. $100,000 at 7% earns about $7,000 a year. Fine. $1 million at that same 7% earns about $70,000 a year, more than the median American makes at a full-time job for doing absolutely nothing. $5 million earns about $350,000 a year while you sleep. Same percentage, same effort. The only thing that changed is the size of the snowball. That's exactly why the first $100,000 feels like pushing a car uphill in the rain, and the second million feels like the universe is just handing you money. The early grind isn't slow because you're doing it wrong. It's slow because the snowball is still small. Munger wasn't being dramatic. He was being precise. So who's treating you differently at level 1? Honestly, mostly math and you. Nobody throws you a party at $100,000, but crossing into actual liquid breathing room money statistically yanks you out of the most financially fragile group in the country. Even among people earning over $100,000 a year, around 44% say they've got little or nothing left after bills. So at this level, the institutions notice, just barely. A bank might unlock better card rewards, a discount on an auto loan. They're not rolling out a red carpet. They've just unlocked a slightly nicer waiting room. It's the first time the machine looks at your number and decides you're worth being a little nicer too. And honestly, Munger said that in the 90s. $100,000 then is closer to 200 today. Aim for 200. But the principle is bulletproof. Get the snowball rolling, because the next line is where other people finally enter the chat. The second line, $1 million. But first, the complicated truth. Using the 4% rule, $1 million generates about $40,000 a year. Forever-ish, that's comfortable. It's not a private jet. $1 million in 1990 has the buying power of about $2.5 million today. The bar moved, the word didn't. Even UBS admits the $1 million threshold is a bit outdated. When the bankers are telling you $1 million isn't what it used to be, believe them. But socially, institutionally, this is where the treatment changes for real. Around this tier, banks stop treating you like an account number and assign you an actual human being. A dedicated advisor, fees waived away, ATM fees refunded anywhere on earth, invitations to events you didn't know existed. Congratulations, you've been upgraded from account number to person they would be genuinely sad to lose. But here's the part that genuinely rewired how I understand wealth. The rich don't get rich and then spend their money. They get rich and then borrow against their money so they never have to sell it. It's called a securities-backed line of credit. You own a big pile of stocks. Instead of selling, which triggers taxes and stops compounding cold, you borrow against them. The bank says, absolutely, here's a low rate, and we won't even check your credit because the portfolio is the collateral. It's like getting to spend your savings without spending your savings. JP Morgan's own marketing shows a $10 million portfolio needing $3 million in cash. If you sell, the remaining $7 million grows into $483,000. If you borrow the $3 million instead and leave all $10 million invested, it grows into $690,000. Even after interest, you come out roughly $148,000 ahead. That's 31% more money for the simple crime of being wealthy enough to borrow instead of sell. This is the entire game at the top. Buy assets, borrow against them, never sell. Repeat. The system has a VIP lane, and the toll to enter is having so much money you don't actually need the lane. But the strange truth of level 2 is that the shift is almost entirely silent. A typical millionaire is mostly home equity and a 401k, invisible at the grocery store. The different treatment all happens behind closed doors. The world doesn't treat you like royalty at $1 million. It just quietly stops charging you the poor person tax. Now hold on, because the third level is where this gets genuinely psychologically weird. Forget the number for a second because you already know the feeling. You've fantasized about it. It's the moment your boss says something unreasonable, and instead of swallowing it, you lean back and think, I do not actually need this job. That's the whole thing. The third line, somewhere between $5 and $10 million, is what I'll politely call freedom money. And the power of it isn't quitting. It's that everyone around you can sense you could. $5 million at that same 4% generates about $200 a year without lifting a finger. For most households, that's not retire someday. That's work is optional today, permanently. You negotiate from total calm. You can't be pressured, can't be leveraged, can't be scared with the threat of a layoff. And weirdly, that earns you more respect, not less. Nothing turns a room toward you like the quiet confidence of someone who genuinely needs nothing from it. This is also where the financial system rolls out the actual red carpet. The real JP Morgan Private Bank wants a minimum of $10 million in investable assets. Goldman's private wealth arm is right around the same, with a median client account near $55 million. Only about 1.6% of American households even crack $10 million. So if you get here, you are statistically a rounding error in the best possible way. But now the dark side, because this is the part the gurus posing next to rented Lamborghinis never mention. At this level, people start treating you differently, and not all of it is good. There's an actual clinical term: sudden wealth syndrome, guilt, paranoia, isolation. The second word gets out. People materialize. Old friends who suddenly remember your birthday, a cousin you last saw at a funeral in 2014 who now has a can't-miss opportunity in vending machines. The relatives come out of the woodwork. We have a natural experiment for this. Lottery winners. A study of thousands of Florida winners found that a windfall of 50 to 150 grand didn't save people from bankruptcy. It just delayed it. They went broke at the same rate, sometimes higher. The money didn't fix the math of their lives. It just bought a longer runway before the same crash. The pattern is rock solid. A huge pile of money dropped onto a life that wasn't built to hold it tends to leak right out the bottom. And then there's resentment. Psychologists call it crab bucket mentality. Put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and any crab that tries to climb out gets dragged back down by the others. People do this too. The moment you visibly start winning, some of the folks closest to you will try to pull you back because your rise quietly indicates they're standing still. The Japanese say the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, so you end up in this lonely paradox. The same wealth that earns you respect from strangers can cost you ease with the people who knew you before. Which brings me to that fourth thing I promised, the reason none of these levels ever feels like enough. You'd think somewhere up this ladder, there's a step marked enough where you finally exhale. There isn't, because the bar runs with you. Charles Schwab surveys Americans every year on what net worth makes a person wealthy, and the number just keeps climbing. Recently, it was about $2.5 million. The person with $1 million looks up at 2.5 and feels poor. The one with 2.5 looks at 10 and feels poor. The goalposts sprint away from you at the exact speed you approach them. Your brain adjusts to every new level in about a month, then quietly demands the next one. That's the trap sitting underneath all three levels, the one nobody escapes by accident. So let me hand you something better than a number to chase. The point of seeing these levels clearly isn't to make you feel behind. It's the opposite. It's to let you watch the machine actually work, charging the rich less and the rest of us more, so you can stop measuring your entire worth against lines that were never built to make you feel like you'd arrived. The first 100 grand is the realest, the hardest, and the one almost entirely within your control. Obsess over that one. Everything after it is mostly the system being the system. And now you can see it happening instead of just feeling vaguely cheated by it. Here's the truth I'd want a friend to tell me. The people who actually win this game aren't the ones who climb the fastest. They're the ones who decide on purpose what enough means for them before the moving goalposts get to decide it for them. You can cross every one of these lines and still be miserable. You can also sit comfortably between them and build a life that the strangers, the bankers, and the crabs in the bucket can't touch. Pick your number, make it yours. And then the genuinely radical part, actually stop when you reach it. And that teller from the very beginning, the one who learns your name? Here's the secret nobody says out loud. They were never really reacting to you. They were reacting to the number on the screen. The entire trick is making sure you never make that same mistake about yourself. If this gave you a new way to see where you stand, do me a favor and subscribe. Because the next thing we're breaking down is the financial trap that hits the moment your net worth starts to grow. The one that quietly eats the gains you worked so hard for. I'll see you in that one.